Matt Conant. Bruce Johnson.
Here.
Bill Conley.
Here.
Todd Kimbleshoe.
Here.
Bo Shepherd.
Here.
Wade Kirchner.
Here.
Dave Shaw.
Here.
Drew Stresser. Lack Vergog.
Yes.
Mike Morris.
Here.
Chris Schmidl.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Will we please stand for the pledge of allegiance? Todd, would you like to lead us?
Sure. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon. We have a moment here for public comment. Members of the public will be allowed to address the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency Board of Directors on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter and jurisdiction of the board. Any member of the audience who may wish to bring a matter before the board has not been placed on the agenda may do so at this time. However, state law prohibits that no action may be taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Any public comment? Seeing none, moving on. Consent calendar. Consent calendar groups together those items of interest which are considered non-controversial or which prior policy direction had been given to the staff and only require routine action by the board. The chair will advise the audience that the matter may be adopted in one total motion. However, the board may, at its option or upon the request of a member of the public, to consider any matter separately. We only have one item.
I'll make the motion.
To approve the agenda?
Yes.
Or the minutes?
Yeah.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We don't need a roll call. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Item number 2, consider approval resolution number 23-07 certifying two-door flood risk reduction project final environmental impact report and mitigation monitoring and reporting program approved the two-door flood risk management project.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Director of Engineering Chris Fritz is going to take this item on.
Okay, Chris, thank you.
All right. Hello, members of the board. Hope you all had a good Labor Day holiday. We're excited to bring this item before you today. This is always a nice milestone in the implementation of our projects where we're finalizing the CEQA document and continuing to move forward with the goal of construction. So there we go. So as just a reminder, this is our ongoing Tudor flood risk reduction project. I have just a couple slides here from the briefing we gave back in April on the design, but essentially this is our cutoff wall project that is progressing for the reach downstream of Highway 99 to the Sutter Bypass confluence. About 1.6 mile reach. Construction cost is currently estimated at about $16.5 million. For construction, basically our EIR is our document that analyzes the implementation impacts pursuant to CEQA. So we have analyzed essentially about roughly a 200-foot wide corridor that runs along the alignment of the levee work. And the levee work consists of about a 1/3 levee degrade, and then we reconstruct the levee back to original lines and grades. It is a cutoff wall. We do have the slough on the water side. We have a landside irrigation ditch on the land side along with adjacent orchards. And we have just a few penetrations that we'll be addressing as part of the project, 2 gravity drain pipes and a pressure pipe. Our EIR, as I mentioned, is the document that analyzes those impacts. We prepared the draft environmental impact report and circulated that out for public review on May 9th. It was a 45-day public review period that then ended July 3rd, 2023. We did receive 3 written comment letters on the draft EIR. They were all relatively minor comments. We received a letter from United Auburn, Feather River Air Quality Management District, and Sutter County Development Services. Really, the only comments that we needed to incorporate and edit the draft EIR to address were the comments from United Auburn. They had a few sites that they wanted us to add regarding the tribal cultural resources, and then we worked with them on some of the language for implementation of some of the mitigation measures during construction. Primarily some of the language regarded to the levee degrade component. Those conversations and the coordination that we've been having with United Auburn has been going well, and we have successfully closed out our consultations with them under AB 52 as part of this process. The comments from Air Quality Management District were more or less along the lines of their standard letter. They send out their standard mitigation measures, which our team was already aware of and had been implementing into the document. And then the comment we received from Sutter County was related to access along West Sacramento Avenue. And so we have been coordinating with the county. We'll continue to coordinate with them as we move forward to construction and during construction to mitigate any potential damage or impacts to that roadway. Because we are proposing to utilize that road for truck traffic during the construction process. The final EIR has been posted to Sbfca's website along with the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan, which is basically the document that summarizes all of the mitigation measures and requirements for the project that have been determined under Sbfca. Also wanted to give you just a brief status update on kind of where we're at with some of the other parts of the project. The 404 and 408 process has been initiated. We're continuing to work with the Corps and Flood Protection Board on that. We also are continuing to coordinate with our IPE, our independent panel of experts for the levee design. I mentioned the AB 52 tribal consultations are now complete, and then we have the action today, before you today, for certifying the EIR. The next big milestone for the project will be completion of the 90% design, which is scheduled for early December. So with that concludes my presentation. Our action before you today is recommendation of adopting the resolution that certifies the environmental impact report and approving the Tudor flood risk reduction project. So with that, Mr. Conan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Is there any question for Chris? Seeing none, I have just one. So Chris, so this is that 2 mile stretch and I was a little surprised at the 16 million. Is that kind of what you guys expected, or is that a little higher than you expected?
It
Seems like
does
it's higher
have
than we would've-
some, so that's based on the 65% design. So it does have contingency built into it, and there are escalation factors. Construction pricing is always challenging, especially times when it's going up and down. Hopefully we're able to bring that down, but we never want to really, we don't try to put us into a position where when we're going out to bid, then we're suddenly shocked with the price either. So that is kind of where our engineering team is at right now with the cost is at that 16.
And I guess my question is more, is this kind of what you expected? Or did this number kind of surprise you when you got it?
It wasn't surprising.
Oh, okay,
Just seeing
typical.
construction pricing in the industry right now, and we'll continue to refine that number as we get closer to the 100% and bid package. But at this stage where we're at, it wasn't for a 1.6 mile reach, it wasn't surprising.
Okay. All right.
So once this EIR is approved by us, how long, what's the next step? How long before we can start, moving some dirt? Do we have to go out to bid first? Is that right?
Well, the next step will be to progress on design. So we still have to get to the 90%, 100%. The big bottleneck, or what takes the most time in that process, is going to be our permitting efforts, primarily the 408 with the Corps. So right now we're targeting construction of this work in summer 2025.
Thank you, Chris. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Okay. Zeth, you're on deck. What's that?
Thank you, Chairman Conant, members of the board, Seth Wurzel, Agency Budget Manager. This is the monthly financial report for the month of July. Unfortunately, due to some vacations and just timing with the City of Yuba City, the monthly financial report for July was not signed off. We prepare the report, the city reviews our information, and then Spencer, our treasurer, and the city finance director and treasurer signs off on it. That wasn't able to be completed before today, but I do have a draft report. The plan is to share that report with the board as correspondence as soon as it's made available. But this is the information that I have that note at the bottom of the slide that is we've prepared and they're reviewing right now, and it should be finalized soon. So month ending July, about 29.45 million, 25. I think that's actually a typo. So 29.45 million estimated to date, reflected of accrued revenues and expenditures to date. So as we move through the rest of this reports for the rest of this calendar year, while we're finalizing our audit, we'll continue to report any accruals from 22-23 and give you an update on 23-24. So you'll see sort of that dual report fashion. So for 22-23, I've mentioned in the past, we've received all of our revenue. So no revenue for 23-24 yet. 750,000 estimated to date based on our submission of assessments to the counties to be collected. For 22-23, about 16.6 million in capital revenue. 23-24, about 2 million of accrued revenue, which is the first installment of our assessment district funds, which we'll receive in January. So that difference of about 3.5 million, it's made up of 682,000 of pending payments with the state for last year, and again, 2.8 million about our operating and capital revenue and assessments for this year. So that's detailed on this slide. I'm going to update for the next month. The table on the right is all our payments. I show that regularly just to kind of emphasize to the board the amount of claims we're making to the state for all of our various grants. We'll just show the pending going forward. And then as I mentioned, our assessments, the split between Butte County, Sutter County, that's approximate, but it's about a little over 2.8 million of pending revenues, about half of our assessments, which would come in January. So I wanted to just show that as accrual now. So that's what makes up our pending 3.5 million that we're waiting on right now. In terms of expenditures, about 6.3 for last year, and about 6.3 total through July. So that's made up of fiscal year 22-23 to date. I think I need to fix this number up here is a little off. But the 5.9 million at 22-23 and another 112,000 for this year so far. Our pending debt service, about 3.8 million, is due in October. That payment has, I believe, already been sent off, it's been sent off, processed for the last debt service payment of 22-23. So the next debt service would be due in February. It's due on April 1st, but we'll get the final invoice in February and make that payment in March. So this hasn't been updated from last month. It's basically what we've got going on right now are all the funding agreements with DWR, Wildlife Conservation Board, CDFW, and others just listed out here. We're in the process of working through closeout on our UFR funding agreement, making the final payments and finalizing reports. That project will be closed out once all the right-of-way transfers take place. And we've got 5 different grants that we're processing for OWA, and either in different stages. And then with the small communities grant and the tutor study, continuing to work through that. The sediment removal, processing payments and invoice packages, and we're just starting with our first payment packages for the Sutter Bypass East Levee, that design work. That's advancing forward, as well as just setting the initial payments requests for our RFMP Phase 4 grant. The assessment administration is basically done at this point for Sutter Butte and Fralifa. The final direct bills will get mailed out at the end of this month. The regional levy impact fee process, we're working through the adoption process with, we've gone through 3 of the jurisdictions thus far, 3 more to go. The next one is in later this month in Butte County, and then we'll be working with Live Oak and Yuba City thereafter. We did have an outreach meeting with the development community yesterday. That went well in Yuba City, and so no vocal opposition to the fee. We expect to have the city help us move that forward here soon. The goal is to try to have the fee effective by the end of this calendar year in all the jurisdictions. And as I mentioned previously, we've kicked off our audit for 22-23 already. So that concludes my financial report. Happy to answer any questions. At this time, I know you don't have a report to review, but we'll get that sent over to the board as soon as it's available from the city.
Any questions for that?
Thank you.
Seeing none. Now we just need to file that, right? Because we don't have anything. Okay. So moving on, presentation and file program project update. Michael.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, good to see everybody here this month. This is your September program project update. I'm going to, as always, start with Feather River West Levee Project 1 closeout activities. As I've stated in the past monthly meetings, we're very close to closing out the environmental mitigation process. That's working on the Star Bend and Matthews Valley Elderberry Bush mitigation sites. And we actually had we'll talk about that a little bit later. That was a subject of the recent Floodplain Management Association conference last week. Also, we're working closely with the Enterprise Rancheria on the cultural resources mitigation closeout. All of our work is essentially completed in terms of the mitigation reporting that we had to do. We're waiting on the Enterprise Rancheria to decide on what to do with the artifacts that are still being held by Far Western in Davis. They were supposed to have taken this matter to their council last Friday, and I'm trying to get a word back from them on the status of that. Also, we're working with DWR on right-of-way closeout, all that transfer of property, and also our grant funding closeout. So we're getting closer to the end of Feather River West Levee Project 1. On Feather River West Levee Project 2, which is what we just talked about earlier, that Chris Fritz provided a presentation on. I'm not going to get into any more detail. Chris provided an excellent presentation there. So once I'm done, if anybody has any questions on that project, we can get into that. Next slide, please. Sutter Bypass East Levee project. So that's the 5.2 miles that we're in design on. We have a scheduled meeting with DWR on the 22nd of this month to talk about alternatives analysis. We had to evaluate different repair methods, mitigation methods, so cutoff wall versus seepage berm versus relief wells or things like that. So you have to analyze those different repair methods, cost them out, look at the impacts, and come up with the preferred alternative. So we have that meeting coming up on the 22nd. Most likely we'll end up with a cutoff wall construction project. On the Oroville Wildlife Area, Robinson's Riffle project, we're setting up for a workshop next month. So staff's been doing a lot of planning work, hydraulic modeling work, and communications and coordination with our partners, CDFW and DWR on that project. So that project's moving forward. On the boat ramp and campground project, right up there at Thermalito Afterbay, our design and environmental teams are doing or conducting the field work that necessary to start the project out. And we're getting close to having some conceptual designs, which I'll look forward to taking to the board once they're ready to present. And but that project is moving forward, so we're happy about that. On the sediment removal project, we're looking for money for phase 2, as I've communicated in the past. We'll be applying for a NOAA grant, and that's due at the 17th of November, so a couple months away. We're communicating with their staff on our project, and then they've offered to help us, with the application, so that was a good sign. We're also communicating with Senator Nielo and the California Natural Resources Agency staff to identify possibly some state funding to implement phase 2. So we're doing everything we can to identify possible funding sources and aggressively pursuing those. On our regional flood management planning grant study, or planning effort, I guess you could say, we are advancing our phase 4 grant with DWR. Sbfca is the lead on implementing that process. We recently applied for a grant through the governor's office. It's called the Integrated Climate Adaptation Resiliency Program grant. And we're looking to partially fund the Tudor Flood Risk Reduction Project. Even though we're advancing that design and permitting on our own, we're applying for this grant, and we're hoping to capture some money to back fund our efforts on that project, and also to fully fund the Lower Feather River Corridor restoration project. So we're identifying restoration work that could occur down in that project area, and if we're fortunate enough to get that grant, that'll help us pursue additional funding for the actual levee construction. So we're looking to build into like a multi-benefit type project, not only flood risk reduction, but also ecosystem restoration or environmental improvements, and that helps us qualify for other project funding in the future. And our team is also scoping out a phase 5 grant with DWR under this RFMP program. So our team are looking to scope out and put a budget together, and we'll be submitting that to DWR. Once again, this is 100% state funded. It helps the region come up and identify projects. We're working together on both sides of the river, and it also pays for our time to work on the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan updates. So it's a very, very positive program, and it allows a lot of the locals to participate in these state-funded activities and also apply for grants for projects. So we've been taking full advantage of it as much as possible. Next slide. Yeah.
Before you go to the next
Yeah.
slide, that sediment removal is right there in Yuba City at the boat ramp, right?
It's at the confluence of the Yuba and the Feather.
Where we've done it before.
Right.
And so, if we get the 10 million, can we just get started, or is there a permitting process?
No, we have all the permits ready to go. We have those. So yeah, that's the beauty of this phase 2 work is it's fully permitted. We would just need to put together a set of bid documents, and that won't take us very long. We're actually going to look at using some of the phase 1 money, what little we have left over to set that up so that we'd be ready to hit the ground and get that out to bid and be in construction. So it won't take us very long at all.
Yep. Michael, I got a couple questions on that.
Yeah.
So when does it become an emergency with the settlement coming down the Yuba River and the Feather River to block that?
Well, yeah, I mean, right now that island is it's vegetated, right? And it seems to be growing.
Right.
So we're keeping an eye on it. I mean, we could get a huge flood this year and that would help move that sediment along. You don't know what could happen.
Or the sediment come down and
Or it could
stop there.
plug it. Yeah, so you just don't know. So I can't really specifically answer that question, but, you know.
No change.
Matt's got a good idea, a couple dead stirs.
Well, what I'm saying is already the water's really,
Right, under low flow
Shallow right now.
scenarios, yeah, it looks like it's a fish passage issue, right?
Environmentalists be against me too.
thank you.
Yeah. Next slide, please.
Just for the report, we're getting El Nino again this year.
Yeah.
That's the report, yeah,
So we're keeping a very close eye on that.
yeah.
Let's see, so we have our City of Oroville levee repair project. So just wanted to let the board know, we did receive, or the City Council of City of Oroville did approve our services agreement. We have a fully executed agreement now, so we're advancing. We're identifying a scope and budget for our first task order with the city. And on their part, they're looking to identify a local funding source to start the project out. So as soon as we get that approved or scoped out and basically approved by the city, I'll be taking that to this board, and then the city would take it to their city council for approval. Once again, that'll be fully funded by the City of Oroville and the future grants that we are successfully acquire on behalf of the city for that project. On the federal project, we are working closely with the Army Corps to have them send back funding that they've been holding, non-federal sponsor funding, so mostly money from the state and Sbfca for the project. So they're going to send some of that money back our way, and we're going to use that to complete those punch list items specifically to the Feather Water District facilities that need to be successfully completed. We're also working on our federal crediting packages to get those approved by the Corps. We estimate those to be around $28.9 million, and that's the amount of credit or whatever the Corps actually approves at the end of the day. It should be around that amount. We're looking to sell that credit to Sbfca, the San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency. So we're in negotiations now, and we expect to see a proposal back from them later this month. And then our team will review that, and once we're satisfied that we fully understand it and we think that's the best offer we could get, we'll take that to our panel of Todd and Charlie and run that through them, and then get their input, and then ultimately we'll be taking something back to this board for approval, hopefully later this year. Yes, sir.
So that's just the terms of the amount there. Didn't you already settle on that amount?
No, well, we did. We had a sort of a handshake deal, but when they took it back to their team, they found out that they couldn't really afford the deal that they.
So they're gonna propose it.
They're going to propose a different deal, right? Yeah, exactly. But yes,
And then unfortunately, it's the only place we can go with that credit.
it's the best place. It's the easiest place that we could sell that credit. Yeah. There's other pathways, but those would be more complicated. This is the least complicated path. Well, they want to make a deal happen also because it greatly benefits them. Let's see, FEMA remapping of Sutter County. So we had some good discussions with a FEMA Region 9 representative at the FMA conference. We found out that they've been reaching out to Sutter County staff, so we were able to let them know where we are at in the process of submitting the FEMA remapping package for Sutter County, at least our basin, not the entire county, but the area of the county protected by the Sbfca project. So that was a good dialogue, and we're communicating with city and county staff as we advance this effort, and then before we send the package in, that all has to be fully communicated with City of Yuba City and Sutter County. So that's ongoing. On the regional development impact fee, we've had really good progress this year. So we've had the City of Gridley approve the fee in May. Biggs did that in July. Sutter County just approved it in August. Seth and Chris just had a really good meeting with the local developers here in Yuba City yesterday to communicate, the information about the fee. We'll be taking this to Butte County on September 26th for their consideration, and the City of Live Oak and Yuba City hopefully in October. So that's how everything is unfolding. Once the last agency approves it, that's when it'll become effective. So we're expecting, we're hoping in January of next year, the fee would be started by all our member agencies. So that's the process that's unfolding right now. And then the last item is the Floodplain Management Association conference. So that was last week down in Los Angeles, and I attended it, and Andrea attended it, and Chris Fritz was there. Not all on Sbfca's dime, but they have other clients that they're representing. But it was a very, very positive conference. I'm going to ask Andrea to discuss. She set up a legal panel that I participated in, but we talked about our environmental mitigation projects and how complicated they are, and how other agencies in the area are doing something similar but different and taking different approaches slightly. And we had a really good dialogue about it. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrea.
Sure. So I know I'm between you and adjournment of the meeting, so I'll be brief. This was a legal panel that talked about setback areas that are used for two purposes. One is water flowing over, which is required under our flood board permits. When you set back a levee, the flood board says, okay, we need to have the right to water to flow over it, which is what everybody wants. That's why we get the public safety benefit of the water flowing over there instead of over the banks of the river. And the second use is conservation, habitat conservation. So the reason that Michael's program project update has had starbend mitigation on it for so long is that we are waiting for the Department of Water Resources and the Flood Board on one side and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife on the other to agree on which trumps. Is it conservation of habitat or is it flowage of water? And for a decade, I've been involved in this conversation on the other side of the river for Three Rivers. And everybody says, well, gee, if the Natural Resources Agency as a policy matter agrees, we ought to be able to use these spaces for both of those purposes. And that makes sense for everybody. It's a win-win. It's actually a win for the habitat. And these projects are modeled to account for riparian jungles in these setback areas. So it's not that water flowing over it is going to kill the habitat. If everybody agrees, then why can't we all just say, great, it's a thumbs up. The problem is these agencies have their silos and they have their legal documents that say this flowage easement has to trump any other easement. This conservation easement has to trump every other easement. And so then they just hit their heads against each other, and it's been years. So I put together a panel conversation to talk about this, what the legal issues are. Michael participated, told the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency story. Paul Dirksen of Sbfca told his story. I talked a little bit about the Three Rivers mitigation bank on the other side of the river. And everybody in the room agreed that the solution is for the agencies to get together and figure this out. There were a number of DWR council in the meeting who completely agreed. The one entity that was not there was the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And, they don't typically attend this conference, so it was a little bit unfair. But And so it remains to be seen, but I think it was helpful to talk about it, to get it all, to air it all out. But this is why that mitigation area, it really is not very complicated. There are already plants there. We've planted it. All we're trying to do is conserve it into perpetuity. And we're, it's the paperwork that we can't get through. So it was a good conversation. Michael did a nice job representing Sbfca on the panel, and we'll see if it moves the needle.
Thank you, Andrea. And also, Chris and I, we worked that conference. So we were talking to all our grant managers. We were talking to future grant managers, hopefully. So we've identified other grants. So we had good dialogue with some of those state representatives. So I would walk by and see Chris work in the room and working different people from the state. So he did a good job representing Sbfca and looking out for our best interests. So it was a very good conference. And that's it. So our next board meeting is in October, and I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, see if there's any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Michael or Andrea? Andrea, excuse me. Seeing none? Real quick, I just want to give a real quick statement. So Sbfca, I also serve on their board, and they're moving forward with a project which will indirectly affect us, and I brought it up before here, and they're going to widen the Fremont Weir and the Sacramento bypass. At least that's what they're trying to do. It's a regional benefit. They will propose the project, but they will not drive it. It'll be driven by the state if it goes forward. They're in studying it right now, and the engineering is being done, and it looks like it's very beneficial. It could lower the water behind Yuba City and Marysville as much as 1.5 feet in major flood events, which is huge. It's a regional benefit. That's why Sbfca is not going to drive it. It will benefit Yolo County. It'll even benefit the county to the south of Sacramento. So it's a very good project that will benefit this whole region. So I just wanted this board to know that that project is still trudging along. We'll leave it at that. So anything else before go to the order of the board? Seeing none, our next meeting, as was stated, is October 11th, 1 p.m. Meeting adjourned.